Johann Friedrich Herbart's most recent work was published in 1840. This begs the question, why bother to look at his theories anyway? What relevance could 19th century pedagogy possibly have for a beginning teacher in 2014? Let's find out. Johann Friedrich Herbart was born in the German town of Oldenburg on the 4th of May, 1776, exactly 2 months before the signing of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. After finishing secondary school, he studied at universities in Jena, Bremen, and Göttingen, before taking a full-time teaching chair at Königsberg in 1809. Here, he founded a seminary for educating beginning teachers, which he continued to conduct until 1833. The teacher training seminar at Königsberg would become instrumental in establishing pedagogy as a rigorous science. One of the fundamentals of Herbart's pedagogic theory is the notion of moral education. Herbart believed that, rather than just creating walking bags of knowledge, education should create citizens who are capable of making decisions when faced with moral dilemmas. The role of the teacher is to guide students in learning how to make these decisions. Early 20th century theorists, including John Dewey, have criticized Herbart's idea of moral education. They argue that moral education turns students into passive receivers of normative codes, preparing them to be obedient subjects in an authoritarian state. This would not have been at all in alignment with the progressivist pedagogy aiming to support students in becoming independent thinkers. However, a closer look at Herbart's writing reveals that he too stresses the importance of the individual's ability to evaluate moral dilemmas independently. He describes an ideal moral educator as knowing how to create a space for learners to find themselves between right and wrong, a space in which learners become open to the other and learn to judge for themselves. Today, one of the most important applications of Herbart's work is in finding a relation between educational theory and practical experiences. Herbart formulated 4 different modes of connecting real-world observations with generalized theoretical abstracts. In each mode, a teacher treats what he is observing in the classroom in a different way, indicating progressively higher levels of reflective teaching. In the first, most basic mode, a teacher forms absolutely no connections between his experiences and an overarching theory. He is in a state of complete ignorance concerning anything beyond what he sees in his own classroom. For all he knows, his is the only classroom there is. In the second mode, a teacher acknowledges that there may be other ways of teaching beyond her own. However, even the second mode is still atheoretical. A teacher in this mode would seek to learn from the experiences of others, but without synthesizing these into a theory of pedagogy. The third mode Herbart presents is one of theoretical perfection. Having learned of a particular school of thought, a teacher in this mode clings to an educational theory as being the answer to all problems he might encounter in the real world. Herbart warns against this mode in particular, with the argument that education can never be described with definite sequences of cause and effect. The fourth and final mode, which Herbart describes, is a state in which a teacher uses pedagogical theory to better understand her experiences and to guide decision-making in practical situations. Herbart calls the skill of making theory-guided, real-time decisions pedagogical tact, or the ability of an educator to connect the theory and its abstract rules and laws with the individuality of the single case before him. The concept of pedagogical tact can specifically benefit beginning teachers. The idea of knowing how and when to apply theory in making sense of practical situations is a useful one to have when dealing with the barrage of advice that we're prone to receiving from all sorts of sources. Colleagues, administrators, friends, family members, neighbors who taught home economics in the 70s, they all have their personal theories of education and are all too happy to share them. It can be overwhelming to make sense of all this advice, much less put it to good use. This is where Herbart's pedagogic tact comes into play. Neither dismissing all of these voices as invalid opinions, nor treating one or another as infallible wisdom, pedagogical tact can help the beginning teacher to integrate the coercive theories into a framework to make sense of his everyday experiences. In this sense, Herbart advocates for a truly reflective teacher. He would have been right at home in a Boettcher cohort.